should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
I finished these fights.
Give me a hell yeah!
Top Rope Nation.
Learn to love it. It's the best thing going today.
What's going on, everyone? This is episode 88 of the Top Rope Nation Wrestling Podcast. I'm Ryan Drosty, your host, and we have a little bit different flavor of a show scheduled for you this week. This has been a crazy week in all three of our lives, really. I've been working 12-hour days this week. Justin's been sick. Kyle's working long days. It's like the busiest time of the year for him at his job. So we thought, let's change it up a little bit this week. We're still going to hit a few things of going on, current events in the wrestling business like we usually do. But we're going to have a big topic this week of the Shield, since all of that obviously just happened with the reunion at Fastlane. And where does the Shield rank as far as historically among some of the greatest factions in wrestling history? So we're going to, kind of rank them and give our thoughts on that and why our rationale for where we would rank the Shield where we would. But before we do that, let me throw it out to Cleveland. Mr. Kyle Ross. Kyle, you were in attendance at Fastlane on Sunday. How was that for you?
It was a fun show and a good show, too. I think best pay-per-view so far of 2018 from the WWE.
Of 2018?
Or maybe 2019?
Yes.
Still recovering.
Yes, I would agree. I think it definitely topped the Rumble.
Yeah, the crowd liked it. One thing that I noticed being in the crowd is how little these podcast talking points that we all harp on, not just, but podcasting as a community in the entire wrestling matter when you're in a live crowd to see WWE.
Mm-hmm.
There was one gentleman, clearly I don't know if he listens to this podcast, but he listens to podcasts. He was a very typical podcast listener. But
by the way, we love all of you listening right now. Just
yeah. Well, this guy I don't love, but we'll get to him in a little bit. But no, it was a really great time. A good spot right where everyone came out right by the right up against the aisle, right against the entranceway. So it was cool too because we were in a back row, so we just sort of could roam around.
Yeah, you were visible on television a few times, Kyle. Me and Justin were looking for you. And if you were in attendance, those of you out there watching or listening at the Quicken Alone's Arena, and you saw a crazy man walking around with a Baker Mania headband on with an American-made mid-'80s Hulk Hogan t-shirt, that was your boy, Kyle Ross.
Yeah. And I was, obviously one of the cooler people there, but who's not one of the cooler people there is, so there was this guy who was very adamant about referring to Seth Rollins as Tyler Black the whole time. And
this makes me think of a Justin Joint memory I have. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I've told this story on this show before about when I was at the ROH show 12 years ago, and I had these OVW DVDs in my hand, and this guy came up to me. I've told that story, haven't I?
Yeah.
Okay, just to rehash, this guy saw me with these. If you missed that episode, guy saw me. This was the Paul Heyman, the short-lived Paul Heyman booked era of OVW. So I bought the weekly TV. Some guy came up to me and was like, OVW, huh? Remember going to a few shows back in the day? There was a guy there by the name of Prototype, but you know him as John Cena. And I'm like, oh, no.
One of these guys.
Yeah, and so we had another one. Every time Seth Rollins, that Tyler Black. Well, this guy had a big problem with some of the WWE storylines. And look, we all sometimes criticize WWE storylines, fair or unfair. But this guy, boy, was this guy obnoxious. He knew two things about wrestling. That Seth Rollins used to wrestle as Tyler Black, and that Dean Ambrose burned his Shield vest once. And he was very clear that this happened, and he would not stop talking. He was, by the way, hanging out with somebody who tried big-timing us and not giving us our seats when we first arrived to the venue. I don't want to name names, but he was a referee of a local promotion here in Cleveland. And we calmly asked him to move one time. He kind of no-sold it, just to make everything clear. We sat in our seats by the time the show started.
You should have just started chopping this guy.
Yeah. And by the way, that local promotion here in Cleveland's a very good promotion, so I don't want this gentleman to in any way cloud anyone's view of that promotion. But yeah, this guy, he was like, and he kept referring to this, but back to podcast guy, as I'll call him. This guy who was being obnoxious. Roman Reigns is a tan John Cena. Charlotte, overhyped bitch.
God.
So, like, it's funny, like, when people, and I had a conversation actually the night prior with a pretty interesting individual, somebody who I think their opinion would matter a lot on pro wrestling. And, I go to this person, I'm like, your biggest audience nowadays, and I think this is reflective in a lot of the storylines and how WWE's trying to draw heat, are these folks who, like, think they know a lot, but they really don't know anything. They think just because, oh, yeah, Seth Rollins, the former Tyler Black. Oh, yeah, I'm so smart. Oh, yeah, I remember that Dean Ambrose burned his Shield vest, and, it kind of is nonsensical that they're back together tonight. But, like, there's no application of that knowledge. It's just obnoxious,
Like, I'm smarter than you are.
Yeah, look at what I read on the internet, but other than that, just a wonderful night of entertainment provided by the WWE.
You got a good show. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good show. Justin Joint on the line, across from Kyle Ross here. Justin, I don't know if you know this or not, but Seth Rollins, he's from Iowa. Did you know that?
Yeah, I was informed he used to be known as Tyler Black.
We had a fan bring that up to us at a show in Iowa before.
Wait,
Justin, your reaction?
I was wearing a Seth Rollins shirt and it's like, yeah, dude, I know.
It was like the exact type of person Kyle is describing her. Yeah, man. Pretty sure I know that. Thanks. And then I think he said, yeah, I saw him wrestle here one time and he was Tyler Black. Did you know that?
Might have been the same guy.
It might have been. Maybe.
Oh, and by the way, the guy who thought he knew it all was, God bless you folks that do this. Okay. There's probably one or two of you listening to the show that do this. He was freaking holding a championship belt. That's so bad.
I'll tell you, I do own a replica of the Winged Eagle, the 87 to 98 WWF title.
Do you walk around the hallway?
No, that's the thing, though.
Iowa high school with that on your shoulder?
No, I have never taken it out of my house. I bought it as a piece that I thought I might like display with my sports memorabilia. Like the minute that thing went up, oh gosh, this is probably 2004 when they sold that. I'd never bought a replica belt before, but I was like, that's the one. I'm buying that. So I bought it, and I do have it, but I haven't got it out in a long time. I do not wear them to the shows. God bless those of you that do, but I would never do it.
I strictly wear my John Cena spinner belt when I go out in public.
He insists on wearing it to work on Casual Friday.
You're not the champion, right, everybody?
Someone had a tweet one time. I was like, you should be forced to have to defend that belt if you wear it to the arena. Yeah. So, Justin, I said you were sick. So you feeling better? Everything all right over there in the Joint household?
Yeah. I ate something on Monday and my body ordered a full evacuation. So doing much better now.
Oh, definitely going to add an air raid siren in
the
podcast right about now. It's just been a weird week because we all watched Fastlane. We're communicating with Kyle. We all were really into that show. But then like TV, I haven't watched all of TV yet this week because it's been a busy week for me. It's been a busy week for Kyle. You were sick. So we're trying to craft the show and what we're going to talk about. Justin kind of threw it out. Where's the Shield rank historically? And I thought that would be an interesting discussion. We always kind of like doing some nostalgia pieces on here going back in time. So if you enjoyed the show, before we get into that discussion, by the way, if you're watching us here on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps us out. Like the video also. That is very important. You like the video, we rank higher in the search results. We'd very much appreciate that. If you're listening on iTunes, same thing. The more subscribers we get, the higher we rank, the more people that discover this show. So subscribe, leave us a rating. It helps us out. Also, you can find us on Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher, TopRopeNation.com, wherever podcasts are found. So
there's a couple things I wanted to go over before we get one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Will actually lead into the Shield discussion. number one, the one thing I did miss out by being there live compared on TV, and I did watch this back, on tape, the finish of the Brian Owens Ali three-way. Ali's back was to us on that move, and like, wow, was that awesome to watch. Like, we got no sense of it from where we were standing, the finish there. So that was great. How did the Shane turn on Miz play on television?
I thought really well. I thought it was really effective.
Well, I mean, the crowd was hot for it, like in the building. Obviously.
Well, and I was going to say, and it helps, and it's rare you see this, but there was like 3 or 4 guys in that front row who reacted exactly how fans should. They're older, so they're in on the gag of wrestling. They're in on the fact that, as Ronda Rousey would like to point out, that it is fake and scripted, but they had a good time with it. They're just yelling, "No, Shane, no," and it just adds to it. It's nice. Play along, everybody.
Honestly, the worst part of it was the Miz's dad. I thought, I thought the rest was executed very well. I didn't think he sold it very well, which, of course he's not in the wrestling business, so he's probably not going to, but he seemed like pretty ambivalent as his son was getting the hell beat out of him. The reaction wasn't the greatest.
He had never told him he loved him until remember.
True.
So, I mean,
Miz must have gotten his acting chops from his mom.
Yeah, that's true. Because there wasn't. I mean, he was trying to act like he was mad, but that was not the greatest. But the rest of it was good. I thought Shane did a really good job, and Miz did a good job, and those 3 fans Justin mentioned. Yes,
he actually threw some good punches for once too. Shane, when he turned, I don't know, does heel Shane throw better worked punches?
Probably more contact, honestly.
Yeah. So we're going to go into this discussion of Shield, and again, I'm going to ask you guys this watching on television, but in the building, it was very clear the Shield was the most overact on the show. Like, I don't know, like the Miz was probably in contention for number 2 just because, being the hometown guy.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it was by far in a way the Shield were the most overact.
Yeah, I think you would expect that, and it definitely came that way on TV too.
I should share with you guys a video. I don't want to get in trouble, so I didn't post it online, but there's this video. There's this woman down the road from us. Now, this was a great wrestling fan. She was into it, kind of like what Justin was saying. If this woman would have been around during Jim Crockett Promotions, when the Rock and Roll Express were in their heyday, she was eating the heat segments up in the special match. She was jumping up and down on her chair, screaming, "Tag your brother! Tag your brother!" and kept referring to Dean Ambrose as, quote, the animal. I don't remember him being referred to as the animal.
If you send me this video, I can splice it into our YouTube version of this show. So for those of you that are watching on YouTube, or if you typically listen to the podcast and you want to see this, because I'm not going to put the audio in the podcast version, but if you want to watch the video version of this show, go to youtube.com/Top Rope Nation, and you will be able to view this video. I'll put it in there. And while you're there, hit subscribe. Might as well. So definitely send that to me, Kyle.
Okay. I'll get it.
Can you imagine this woman?
That's awesome. So the Shield, huge moment this week. So it got us thinking, like I said, where do they rank historically? And I started making a list. Justin made a list. I'm sure Kyle's list is up in his head, but Kyle's a walking encyclopedia of pro wrestling knowledge.
Well, when Justin asked this, it's like, oh, what? Like I already didn't have that list?
Yeah, he probably have like a spreadsheet already made. Yeah, I don't know. I had a difficult time with this because I think it's hard to rank a current act. If 5-10 years from now, when we look back, well, I think their ranking will even go up from where it is now. But in the time period, it's always kind of hard because we look back with, especially like things from our childhood with a little bit of nostalgia. And I don't know. When I was making my list, I tried to think of it because it depends what you're ranking. Are you ranking them as being successful? Are you ranking them for having great matches? Are you ranking them for like pop cultural significance? I put a lot of like popular culture significance within my list, because I feel like there's 3 or 4 teams that are just so like beyond any other stable in wrestling history that it's hard to top. But then like the Shield's right there, right after that, I think. So Justin, give us your thoughts.
Well, I kind of looked at it as the same way as you. I had 4 things in mind, and that's impact on, I think, wrestling, which is kind of like the pop culture thing too. The members. So like, did the group make them stars? Were they already stars? Was there filler? Then 3, any kind of great storylines they were involved in. And then 4 was, the quality of their matches. Those were the things I was looking for. And I tried to be objective, but obviously when it comes to wrestling, it's mostly going to be subjective. And because of my age, it's biased towards factions since 1990.
Yeah, same. Kyle, your initial thoughts and your rationale?
I could just parrot what you said. Both you said, but Ryan in particular.
Jerk.
Finally, I get some credit on this damn
I love
podcast.
you, Justin Joint. You know that. There were 3 that immediately jumped. Like, I was like, all right, these are the top 3 fractions. And it's, undisputed, to quote Adam Cole. But after that, like, for me, I started thinking, I was like, yeah, the Shield measures up pretty well. And, the sort of pop culture transcendence impact on the business also, for me, is the biggest factor whenever I evaluate wrestling. I know last year, Place to Be Nation, when they did like their greatest WWF/E wrestler of all time. To me, I just don't know how your top 5 in some order is not, Hogan, Austin, Rock, Bruno, and Cena. Like those, like, I know Mount Rushmore's 4 people, but like those 5 are like the Mount Rushmore of Titan sports.
Yeah. And to be clear, with our factions list, we're looking at all of wrestling. So beyond WWE, we're considering WCW, NWA, Crockett Promotions, all of that, New Japan as well. So to just start it off, when you look at the top of the list, to me, it comes down to 2. And I have a hard time deciding like who I would rank among those 2 as the best faction of all time, but it's the Horsemen and the NWO. Would you guys agree? For your top 2, or who did you have in your top 2, Justin?
Neither of those.
Really? Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah.
Kyle, did you?
They were both in my top 3. Yes.
Wait. Who did you say? Who's your first one?
So I'm going back and forth between the Horsemen and the NWO.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm sorry. I do have one of those in my top 2.
Okay. I felt like in the top 3, I had the Horsemen, the NWO, and DX. I feel like those 3 are pretty solid at the top.
Yes, those are my top 3, but DX is above the NWO.
Okay.
I actually had to think about that. To me, the Horsemen are pretty. If you want to start, well, I guess they're the go-to, I guess if you don't think the Horsemen are the top faction of all time, I'd be interested to listen to your argument for that. But to me, it's just like they're kind of the standard for which every other faction is judged on.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Horsemen had some lean years and some poor lineups. There's no doubt about it. But, for me, those, like you said, Ryan, were the clear top 3. Like, there's a significant drop off just because of the impact on the promotions that those 3 had compared to everyone else. I mean, there's some that we really liked, but, maybe the impact wasn't there. But NWO was 3 for me because as much as they, strapped the rocket to WCW business, you can make a pretty strong argument they were just as important in killing that company.
Yeah, that's true. It got really watered down, especially when they started doing the different groups with the red and the white. Yeah, I ended up going with the Horsemen, I think, for number 1, just because of longevity. And although they had lean groups, like Kyle said, it didn't get watered down to the point of the NWO. I think pop culture significance, the NWO outranks the Horsemen because they were on top during a more popular era. But I think if you throw up the 4, I think a lot of people, even beyond wrestling, that were around like in the 80s at least, would know what you're talking about. But not to the level of the NWO. Like growing up in the 90s, if you went to the mall, you saw NWO shirts. Like everyone is familiar with the NWO shirt. So I think pop culture wise, NWO of the factions and DX are probably at the top because of the era. But when you look at the whole picture, like match quality, storylines, the people that are in the groups, like Justin was saying for his rationale, pretty tough to beat the Horsemen as a whole package.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Justin.
I would just, to add on the NWO thing, they are, one of the most impactful factions in the history of wrestling just because of the boom it created for wrestling. And to kind of kickstart it off was one of the greatest moments in wrestling history was Hogan turning heel. And with the Four Horsemen, their origins and those original teams, especially, my favorite being the one that included Barry Windham, they were so good that that was one of the few factions where you could take a guy, put him in the Four Horsemen, and it makes him more prestigious. And not only that, but even today, you can just go around the WWE roster and say like, "Ooh, he would be a good Horseman type, wrestler."
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I had the Horsemen 2 and NWO 4, just because NWO was like, for one, their storyline, they had a couple good storylines, but it always led to just the most disappointing matches you've ever seen. They never had great matches as a faction. So really you just had, the origins and the boom. And then, a year and a half later, it just kind of like how Kyle pointed out, started sinking that company.
Mm-hmm. So who'd you have number 1?
Oh man. I had Bullet Club /
Oh, dear God.
I have them 4th. So I'm not too far away from you, but I do have them 4th. Actually, I think my top 4 are pretty well set. And after that, it's really tough. I feel like after the top 4, the Shield could really come anywhere, to get the Shield back into this discussion.
My argument for Bullet Club is I feel like it's to a lesser extent, but similar to the NWO, they have this pulp culture significance on the wrestling industry. There is not a wrestling show you can go to where you are not going to see some variation of a Bullet Club shirt. It transcended Japan. It reached all the way across, the ocean and came over here to the United States. It created stars. It put Finn Balor on the map. It did a ton for AJ Styles. It did a ton for Kenny Omega and the Bucks. And it basically led to what should be, the third or second most interesting wrestling company in the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah, I had them 4, and pretty much all the reasons that you listed there. I don't know that WWE, since the heyday of Austin and The Rock, have released a T-shirt that's pop cultural significance reaches what the Bullet Club has. You're right. You see those shirts everywhere. Indie shows, WWE shows, unbelievable. I think, man, 3 or 4 years ago, I had an argument with some people on Twitter about is the Bullet Club pop culture, and they all said no. And I'm like, are you guys crazy? You're seeing these shirts everywhere. It's definitely pop culture. And that was when they had signed, to have the shirts at Hot Topic and all that. And
I really think it just raised awareness for quote unquote independent wrestling, and just it widened the entire landscape.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's never been anything close outside of WWE, since WCW went out of business that got to this level as the Bullet Club. So, and yeah, membership wise, a lot of big stars, great workers, lots of great matches with these guys. Pretty much carried New Japan for the last several years. At least they're getting
their business. I mean, people forget Japan, in the early part of the century, no one was talking about Japan.
Yeah, when Brock went there, nobody was talking about it. It was it didn't have the prestige maybe for a lot of fans over in North America, at least, that it did in the 90s. I remember getting into tape trading, and I had to get the Japanese tapes. But then through the early to mid 2000s, nobody was really talking about Japan.
Yeah.
So it definitely got North America on board for sure. And you can't underrate that. I mean, that was huge.
No, look, I'll be very honest with you. They have a very strong argument to be the 4th faction on this list for me. Very strong. I don't think they have the pop culture cachet the top 3 groups do. I think I hate this because it's hard when people get in the wrestling bubble. I think within the wrestling bubble, the pop culture or whatever we want to first phenomenon, the Bullet Club is so strong. But if you mention Bullet Club to the public at large, do they have any clue what you're talking about? Whereas I feel like the NWO, people like that didn't even watch wrestling, just like whether they wanted to or not, knew that the NWO was wrestling. DX, I think, you know, you would have people that, you know, if somebody said, oh, that suck. Like if somebody made a suck it reference, they'd be like, oh, that's wrestling.
Yeah, everyone knows that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Maybe the Horsemen not. I mean, I don't know. It was tough. You know, NWO and DX, their heyday was when I was in high school and college, so it was easy to tell. But, you know, I mean, even the Horsemen, and people throw up the four fingers. I think, you know, there's a lot of people who know what that means.
I would agree. I don't think it has reached the pop culture success of those three.
And as Randy Orton pointed out, man, the Bullet Club, they're not afraid to borrow a few things.
I was going to say that was my next point.
What a promo that was by Randall Keith Orton, touching on all the right buttons.
Isn't that interesting, though, that if we look at the top four, and like me and Justin have them in our top four, number 1 and number 4, this group is started out as like a cosplay of one of the other groups, you know?
Which is why I don't think why I personally could not have them above the NWO. Although, again, they have, you know, not yet, will not, whatever, have the destructive influence that the NWO did. It really, you know, when Hogan and Nash and those guys would just not give up their spots, that caused a major problem. The NWO basically ate WCW alive. As much as we all, you know, sometimes give Vince shit because he never portrays outsiders as equal or certainly not better. The one example of a promotion allowing an outside group, quote unquote, to look stronger than its, you know, itself, than the promotion itself, that promotion died. You know, WCW basically was never allowed to fully get its heat back against the NWO and prove that, you know, they started calling the pay-per-views WCW/NWO. I remember that was a big talking point in '98. It basically was like, oh, okay, well, the NWO is just as important as WCW. It's not just this heel invading group that we're going to be back to make WCW even stronger moving forward. It basically ate the promotion alive.
And so obviously the culture at large, NWO is, you know, heads above Bullet Club, you know, but as far as, you know, kind of kayfabe in a way, but as far as star making, I think Bullet Club is far better than NWO was, unless you want to make an argument for Scott Steiner or Marcus Bagwell. And then also, you know, kind of your point, like NWO ended up killing WCW, whereas Bullet Club has kind of created its own new company, kind of the exact opposite of what NWO does. So that's kind of why I rank it a little bit higher. Yeah.
To your point, your 4 criteria: pop culture impact, members, storylines, match quality. I'd say the Bullet Club easily 3 of those 4 for sure. Yeah. Members, storylines, and match quality. I definitely have to go with the Bullet Club. So it's how much do you rank the impact factor, I think. But I think top 4, top 5 for sure. For me, Bullet Club would be in there.
I mean, the NWO never did, but it never was about making stars. It was kind of about taking existing guys, you know, who were already huge names and just you know, it was basically, you know, let's put a bunch of guys who cut their teeth in WWE, WWF, and, you know, make them an outside type group.
You know, like maybe someone like Conan wasn't known to the not the North American, but the United States crowd as much. Like that made him a bigger star, but he was a big star in Mexico.
And Hall and Nash were much bigger stars in WCW than they were as Diesel and Razor Ramon.
Yeah, for sure. So
there is one match I'll point out. If you think you've never seen a good NWO match, and trust me, there are not many. Slamboree '97, the main event of that show, it's the Wolfpack, Hall, Nash, and Waltman against Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, and Kevin Green. Give it a watch. I know you're listening to those names and you're like, there's no way in hell. Give it a watch. It's in Charlotte. Crowd's hot. Kevin Green always, to me, was a guy who could have, you know, done something in wrestling had he not been still in the NFL. It's a fun match.
I'll tell you what, only our Kyle Ross would pull a match like that out of his ass to recommend.
Is that 98?
97, Slamboree 97. It's a show that I did not watch it all the time. Like, it was very skippable. But somebody said, oh, this match is good. And I was like, oh. And I watched it. I was like, holy God, like this, the heat. I mean, like the Wolfpack are great heel stooges in the match. They, you know, they work exactly like they should. For people who didn't think the NWO ever gave WCW guys anything. They do in this match. If you remember, if just trying to jog memories, remember Nash went on Nitro and cut this kind of shootish promo about Flair and Piper and about like old guys holding everyone down when he was in WCW the first time.
Vaguely.
Okay, that promo led to this match. So
okay.
But other than that, yeah, I mean, it's other than the Randy Savage DDP matches, there was, I mean, not a lot of match quality from the NWO.
Yeah. So, okay, outside of those guys, and do you have someone, another faction in mind, Kyle, you want to throw in like this top 4 discussion? Because you had the same top 3 as me.
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, one thing with DX that's interesting is successful both as baby faces and heels.
Yeah.
And every iteration, I mean, for me personally, my favorite will always be the Shawn Hunter group when the first started. But then they had a great babyface run with Triple H as the leader, X-Pac and the Outlaws joining in. Then, a year, after they broke up, they reformed in '99. More or less, X-Pac and Outlaws were flunkies for Triple H at that point. The dynamic was a little different as heels, but they were effective in that role. And then, years down the road, obviously, the Shawn Hunter 2006 babyface iteration is not.
I was not a fan of that. I think we talked about that on the show before.
Yeah, but you know what? It was kind of over, so I guess you have to give them some just due. And here's another thing we have to consider with DX. We talk about the Bullet Club kind of, being a cosplay of NWO. When DX first started in '97, what was the knock on them? Everyone's like, oh, they're WWF's kind of, I mean, it wasn't necessarily apples to apples, but people were saying, oh, WWF's trying to have their NWO. I mean, it never grew to the size of the NWO in terms of members, but it very clearly was like the same type deal.
Yeah.
Kind of a group of heels who acted like they were above the promotion.
Yeah, and plus you had Hall and Nash, and everyone knew they were buddies. So
yes,
remember
when they showed the Click incident on Raw? What a wild time 1997 Raw was.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like you get us outside of this top 3 or 4, and then it's like anybody's ball game. And so like I can see how people could rank the Shield like 5th, in history. I can also see how people could say, maybe top 10, maybe just outside the top 10. It just kind of it comes down to what you're a fan of, And as I look at my list, it's pretty difficult. I'm not quite sure where I would put the Shield, but I do think top 10 for sure.
They are easily the best WWE faction post Attitude Era.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You either be them or Evolution. And the thing with Evolution is you look at the members and, when they come out, they had a certain cachet and, the Line in the Sand is like a really awesome song. But wow, did they preside over a dog period of Raw. I mean, those Raws were not good when they were on top.
Yeah.
At all. So that's kind of like a mark against them. And did the Shield ever get a fair run? We need to talk about that because they were broken up way too early.
Yeah, certainly broke them up way too early. That hurt them for sure.
And then they were broken up foolishly. I mean, they're literally the only group that I think has been foolishly broken up twice.
Yeah, it's weird because some of these groups, it's like they kept on too long, like the NWO, and then here's the group that didn't go long enough.
Yeah. I mean, to me, when I watched the main event in the building, I was thinking to myself, imagine breaking this group up. Like, why do they have, like, I get that you want to push them as, individuals, but why do they have to be broken up to do that?
Mm-hmm.
You can have them still be loosely associated, and then when necessary, they can team up again. I mean, that 2014 turn was just so ill-timed with, they were on top. They'd just been put over Evolution 2 straight times. And Daniel Bryan, your top babyface, went on the shelf for an extended period of time. You needed a top babyface act.
Mm-hmm.
And then, obviously this last time when they did it, the Ambrose heel turn was, an unmitigated disaster.
So would we all agree, like with the Shield, Reigns and Rollins went out on to bigger and greater things. Ambrose, this is the highlight of his WWE run. Like unquestionably. Would you guys agree?
What?
Yeah, I mean, he was world champion, but
yeah, true. I would say like his Shield, to me, his Shield run was his height though. I feel like I had like high hopes for him coming out of the Shield, and even when he started with the Shield, everyone was talking about him like, oh, he's the new Roddy Piper. I remember people saying.
That's what's so funny is like looking at where they're all at now, and then you look at who they gave the championships to.
Yes.
Reigns and Rollins got the tag titles while Ambrose got the United States title. I mean, that's just amazing to look back on.
It's just like when I'm trying to think where I'm going to rank them, like I don't want to rank the faction based on what the guys did individually. Do you know what I mean?
Well, but I think that's part of it. I think you should look at what they were able to do with each other and what that propelled them to do later on in their careers, and like the superstar, the star power involved. I think that's important.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think, Kyle?
I think that's interesting because let's like look at those top groups we talked about. Like, I feel like a lot of them, again, it wasn't about with the Horsemen. There were some instances individual, but like Flair was already a made guy when the Horsemen started. Flair had been on top for 2 years, if not longer, when like the Horsemen officially started. Tully had been a top guy. Arn had been at the top, Ole Anderson. I mean, these were like not, new names. Luger was a huge benefit to him to join the group when he replaced Ole. But, even Barry Windham was already kind of a made guy. He'd been in title matches the year before.
You already kind of pointed out, I think NWO catapulted Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, and I would say DX catapulted Triple H.
Yes, for sure. I would, and that was a point I was going to get, Triple H, people forget he was the opposite of interesting before DX started in the summer of '97. I mean, remember, people were always like, God, what are they going to give? I mean, that was a knock on it. People were like, what are they going to give it up with this guy? Remember the signs, Triple H mid card for life?
Yeah. I think Brett kind of bashed him on Wrestling with Shadows. This is a guy that nobody's ever going to like, or something, like the character at the time, the snobby guy.
But, give credit. I mean, you look at the time when DX started, fall '97, and a year after that, where Triple H was, he was like the second most over babyface after SummerSlam '98, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I wanted to say about the Shield real quick is, obviously they made themselves into superstars, but also I think more than any other faction, especially as a faction, by far and away the best matches.
Yeah, all the trios matches are really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of these teams, they didn't have a lot of faction matches. Like I think the Hart Foundation, they had the Canadian Stampede, because the Hart Foundation to me is in the top 10.
Yeah,
but they weren't. I guess they're working some tags here and there. But.
Yeah, I mean Owen and Davey have the Raw tag against Michaels, which is really good. Well, I mean, when you talk match quality, I mean we got to talk Horsemen. I mean, War Games.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, and lots of other, By the way, one thing that's interesting, because I thought about it, Justin brought this up, and I meant to bring it up earlier, that, he's not alone. I think most people consider the Rick, Arn, Tully, Barry version the best version of the Horsemen. Only around for like a couple months, like 5-6 months. Like Barry joined in April when he turned on Luger, and then Arn and Tully quit by the fall to go to WWF over money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as much as everyone remembers that, and thinks that, Rick has said himself on DVDs, oh, that was the best version. He was only around for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing here I've been thinking about as we've been talking is that we've been talking about springboarding people to stardom from these groups. And you look at a group like the Hart Foundation, for that group, that was like their last hurrah. Like all these guys came in established, and after the Hart Foundation, none of them were ever like that big again. Obviously, WCW blew up Brett.
Yeah, I'm saying none of them were even in the promotion again.
Yeah.
The thing with the Hart Foundation, that '97 run, is that was just one of the best storylines, and that was it created some of the hottest crowds. It turned two nations against each other as far as wrestling.
Yeah. Impact wise, the Hart Foundation ranks really high because that was kind of the start of WWF's business turning the corner. Yeah. Right before I guess that's like the start of the Attitude Era, really. Yeah. So.
I mean, it made a red, white, and blue loving Ryan Drosty by a Canadian flag.
That's right, at Epcot Center in 1997.
Oh, I've heard it all now.
Yeah, that was my family went to Disney World in the summer of '97, and we went to Epcot Center, and I immediately wanted to go to the Canada section so I could get a flag. It's true.
My favorite part of the Hart Foundation was the formation. When remember Owen and Davey they'd been teasing a breakup angle for months, and then Brett pulled a power play actually behind the scenes once he agreed to turn heel. For those who don't know, he basically was like, "No, well, I want to do a faction with Owen and Davey," and they just put the kibosh on the split angle. They were wrestling Owen and Davey on Raw. Brett comes out and cuts that unbelievable promo where Owen is like crying at the end. Like that was the best. Like seeing Brett and Owen embrace after basically feuding for over 3 years at that time was just so great.
Yeah, they rank really highly for me. That's one of my favorite periods in wrestling history. I would put them above the Shield personally, just because the storylines were so great. Like I like the Shield a lot. I don't feel like any of their storylines like grabbed me like what happened with the Hart Foundation that year.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, they're in an era where the classic storylines maybe just aren't there.
Yeah, for sure.
What's the Shield's best storyline? Is it
I was thinking about that? And
is it the babyface turn and feuding with Evolution?
Yeah, I think it's that babyface turn going from the Wyatt family to crushing Kane and New Age Outlaws into Evolution. And then, honestly, I think an argument could be made for this return at Fastlane. I mean, obviously, that's kind of not a storyline as much as it is just a story.
A one-off, yeah.
Yeah, like something they'll show on the highlight reels always.
Hart Foundation, again, not a long shelf life.
No, I mean, we're talking
7 months.
Yeah, 7.5, 8 months right in there, starting in March to November. And, well, they kind of started, Brett's heel turn started in March, I guess, so then we'd be into April. So, yeah, about 7 months.
It wasn't until April, I think, that they started and they didn't solidify, because, like, Neidhart didn't join till maybe even May or something.
Yeah, he came in real late.
Yeah, him and Pillman. I can't remember.
He had like a contract with some indie group. I feel like we talked about this on the SummerSlam 97.
Yes.
So that's a good spot to promote our Patreon, which I haven't been talking about. If you like listening to us talk classic wrestling, we started a Patreon page, patreon.com/Top Rope Nation. We produced 2 shows exclusively for Patreon. You can hear like the first 10 minutes, I think, on our podcast feed of the SummerSlam 97 show. And we talked a ton about the Hart Foundation on that show. But if you want to hear the whole thing, yeah, patreon.com/Top Rope Nation. If we get some more subscribers, we'll start putting out more Patreon-only classic shows like this, because we love doing it. We just need people to sign up to make it worth doing, and we'll produce more shows.
Anyway, I'll do it anyway. Just keep hitting record.
Just to
I'll talk about
out content.
Yeah. It was a comparable group to me for the Hart Foundation, and a group that I think we're all going to have in our top 10 is Dangerous Alliance.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like, in terms of now, it was not to the level that the WWE's business resuscitated, obviously, but when Dangerous Alliance got going, and people forget. Look, I can watch just about any era of like any part of WWF, WCW since like the national expansion. I can basically watch any era. The summer of 1991 WCW is absolute, unmitigated horse manure. Like when
is such a Kyle Ross. I love that. That is such a Kyle Ross line.
Like
right
that 4 months after Flair left is awful. Like it is so bad, and they had no idea what to do. And then here comes the Dangerous Alliance, man, and things picked up. And you talk about a group where the guys could all be utility guys. They did so many 6-mans on WCW Saturday Night. Tag team matches on Clashes. Even, they technically were not Dangerous Alliance yet at this point, but like the Arn and Larry tag match against Dustin and Ricky Steamboat at Clash 17 is like one of the best WCW matches of the 1990s. That War Games in Wrestle War 92, many consider that the best WCW match of the 1990s. So they're a group, obviously, who is very much near the top, even though, 1992 WCW business is not great. But I think, without the Dangerous Alliance, God knows where that promotion would have ended up going into 1992.
Yeah, especially when you look at talking about the members,
Yes.
in such a you know, a collage of past greats, current greats, and obviously a future top 3 wrestler of all time. And more than that, all those guys could freaking go in the ring. All of them. They were just so good.
You know, to what you just said, I remember I have like a buddy who like did not watch WCW at all in the early 90s. And I told him, like, I recommended the Dangerous Alliance to him. He asked me a WCW question. I was like, you should watch the Dangerous. He's like, well, who is that? And I named the members, and he was like, holy shit, that was a group? I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, oh yeah.
Turn on that award-winning WWE network. Educate yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the great periods in ring, at least, of WCW's history. That like first, very end of 91 into, the summer of 92.
This is like the prime Justin Joint era of WCW watching as well.
It's prime wrestling in general for me. I mean, I was in that sweet spot of being 11 years old, and my dad had a satellite that got pay-per-views for free, and oh boy, that was a good 6 months for Justin.
I feel like when we became friends, like half our discussions were about that era of WCW at the time.
It's the best.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you look at it, Super Bowl, which we've mentioned on the show ad nauseum, Super Bowl 2. Then Wrestle War was after that. And Beach Blast, 92. I mean, those are 3 awesome pay-per-views. WWE Network just put up that run of Superstars in 1992, those episodes. WCW was much, much better during that period than WWF.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah.
It got bad towards the end of 92 for when, Watts thought Heyman was making too much money, and he basically disintegrated Dangerous Alliance. And oh boy, it was real small crowds by the end of 92, but man, it was great while it lasted, the Dangerous Alliance. Again, not around long, similar to the Hart Foundation.
Yeah, but if you're not around long, but that period is really good, you can rank them high. I think I'm pretty well set. I think I'm going to put on my list the Hart Foundation 97 as number 5. And then when I look at the rest of my list, I think I'm putting the Shield at number 6. To be honest, I got a longer list that goes beyond 10, but I was kind of like trying to mark who I would throw in my top 10. I think of all these, I got the Shield, and then beyond that, it could really go in any order.
I want to hear some of your other both of your guys, some of your top, who's rounding out the top, because I assume the 7 that we've mentioned so far, we all would consider top 10.
Yeah, I have the Dangerous Alliance.
Yep.
I have the Nation of Domination.
They just missed my cut.
Yeah.
God, they were, yeah.
You look at star making though, man. The Rock came into his own in the Nation.
He did.
That's what I kept thinking. I kept coming back to that. And they had some really memorable stories too. Like when Ahmed joined the Nation, I remember being like blown away.
In their feud with DX.
Yeah. To me, they rank pretty high. But
yeah. I like the Rock-led version a lot better than the Farouk-led version.
Oh yeah, me too. I agree. More entertaining. So I have the Dangerous Alliance also that is in top 10 consideration. Nation of Domination, Evolution. I got the New Day up there.
Okay, so bring them see, I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth on that too, but yeah, 3 guys. Yeah.
Well, it's not just because it's not the size, it's that I just feel that they're a tag team more than a stable that has 3 guys.
Yeah. I think once you get to 3, and because I had completely forgotten about them, but I have them ranked 7 is the Freebirds. And it's like, I didn't even get to experience the real impact they had because that was more down south, and I didn't really get to watch that, because you talk to any wrestling fan from down south and they're going to talk about Freebirds versus Von Erichs as one of the greatest feuds of all time.
I did a deep dive. I've watched almost all of 83 World Class on the network. Dude, you want to talk about some of the best crowds in wrestling history? Give me the weekly crowd at the Dallas Sportatorium.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these people were just absolutely emotionally invested in that feud more than like any crowd has been in any feud in history, really. I mean, the Freebirds are top 10 for me. And they're more Shield than New Day to me in terms of being a faction. I've said it before. I think the New Day might be the greatest tag team in WWF history.
Yeah.
And what's funny is we don't think of the Shield as a tag team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got the only other ones that, like I said, that was in no particular order, but I'm just going down the list of who I had jotted down in that order. No ranking, and the only ones left were the Freebirds and the Corporation, which I thought the Corporation did some pretty memorable stuff.
Not
there.
Ted DiBiase's Corporation, I hope.
No.
Because that would be on the list of one of the worst wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are all, I guess that puts me at
no League
1,
of
2,
Nations.
3, 4, 5, 6. That's putting me around 11 or 12. These are the ones I'd start as in consideration for my top 10. So I guess from those 6, I'd have to pick 4. If I got the Hart Foundation at 5, the Shield at 6, I think I'd have to probably, of those, go with the Freebirds next, and that would be like my 7th, and then maybe Dangerous Alliance at 8, Nation at 9, and then I'm picking for my 10th slot between Evolution, New Day, and the Corporation. I think I might put Evolution at number 10. So the New Day would just miss it. The Corporation would just miss it. And then on the outside, others that I really liked. I really liked Raven's Flock for a while in WCW.
I was going to make sure we brought them up because I was a huge fan.
Yeah, I liked Raven's Flock a lot.
I've been
the
watching
Brood was pretty cool,
but they never did. I felt they always should have done more with them. Like that was like the thing. Like if you talk to people in the crowds in '98. Mm-hmm. Everyone's like, these guys are cool. But they never really did anything with them. Remember, they just joined that. Okay, you talk about one of the shittiest factions of all time. The freaking Ministry of Darkness must be mentioned. Because that was bad.
Yeah.
Corporate ministry, that was all bad. Do we consider the Heenan?
Oh no, we lost him. We lost him right when he was bringing up something I really
the
wanted
Heenan
to
family.
talk.
That's another one of mine that
okay.
just kind of misses the top 10.
Now see, I don't consider them a stable, and if I did, they would be top 5. And I don't consider them a stable because they were never really together. It was just more individuals being managed by Bobby Heenan.
Yeah, it was like you knew the group of people Heenan was with, but you didn't really you didn't see them together a lot, all of them together. Yeah,
that's what
Kyle,
I think.
The Heenan family.
They're more of just a tree from Bobby Heenan.
Yes.
Kyle, you missed it. What I said was, I don't consider the Heenan family a faction, but if I did, I'd have to have them top 5. They were more just individuals, all managed by the same person.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I just wanted to throw it out there just for.
I'm glad I had that in my notes. I just forgot to bring it up.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to Raven's Flock. I've been watching a lot of early '98 Thunder recently, obviously after our discussion.
Yes.
What a thing. They were fun. Man, they
That's
really
a callback
were.
to last week's show, by the way, if you haven't heard it. Yes.
Yeah. Also, I watch early '98 Thunder, I feel like the same complaints about it would apply to modern WWE. It very much in terms of it's pretty with some of the storylines, kind of not going anywhere sometimes or being forgotten. And maybe questions of elevation, which always, people sometimes wrongly criticize WWE for, but that was far more prevalent in that era of WCW.
Yeah. So who else would you have kind of rounding out your top 10, Kyle?
I feel we hit them all. After the big 3, I said, okay, Bullet Club's, they've got a discussion for number 4. I would consider them 4. Then I think you're looking at, Shield, Dangerous Alliance, Hart Foundation, Freebirds. So we're up to 8.
You haven't given us your thought on Evolution.
Yeah. So like I said, you run through the list, if you just showed me a picture of the Evolution or you sent me a link to Motorhead's Line in the Sand, I'm like, oh yeah, Evolution. But it cannot be discounted how bad Raw was in 03.
Yeah, it was a good star making group, but no question put the Shield over.
Okay. That part of the equation, they rank very high for what it did because Orton and Batista were nothing really before that group, and both went on to become headliners. I've said it before on this program. Obviously we've all come full circle with Triple H and Batista working each other at Mania this year. That Triple H Batista storyline, which began late 2004 and then culminated at WrestleMania 21 and actually kept going on before that, was one of the last great money drawing storylines for WrestleMania. I mean, now they just sort of put on a big match, but like you talk about an angle that took months to develop. That did big business on the back of that angle and feud. I mean, when Batista gave the old fake thumbs up and thumbs down to Triple H and Ric Flair, that's a top 10 Raw moment, baby.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Me and my friends imitated that so many times after that. Yeah. Justin, your final thoughts on your top 10. You can read off your top 10 if you want to. Kyle's is probably off the top of his head, but I'll read mine one more time. So I got the Horsemen at 1, NWO at 2, DX at 3, Bullet Club at 4, Hart Foundation at 5, Shield at 6, Freebirds at 7, Dangerous Alliance at 8, The Nation at 9, and Evolution at 10. So just missing my cut, I would say, would be New Day, Corporation, Ravens Flock kind of is up there, and The Brood.
I got Bullet Club, Four Horsemen, NWO, DX, Shield, Hart Foundation, Freebirds, Evolution, New Day, and Dangerous Alliance. And I just want to throw out there one that obviously is not great by any means, but I just love the idea of was Legacy.
Yeah. It was a good idea.
It was kind of like Evolution, but with Orton as the leader. It was kind of, we talk about things that, parrot other previous groups. I think, Legacy was definitely, Randy Orton in the Triple H role of Evolution. So.
All right.
I guess my top 10 would be New Day if we're counting them. I initially didn't count them as 10. Evolution is 9. Dangerous Alliance 8. Hart Foundation 7. Freebird 6. Shield 5. Bullet Club 4. NWO 3. DX 2. Four Horsemen 1.
Nice. I think we're all pretty close. Like about on the same page. So.
Four Horsemen in terms of star making, I guess you could make the argument Pillman and Benoit. I really liked that. I mean, I know that we're not supposed to say any nice things about Chris Benoit anymore for good reason, but I really liked that version. I love the match too that got them back together, where Pillman, Arn, and Flair all turned and beat the tar out of Sting.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween Havoc '95, love it.
Yeah,
just because the crowd actually bought. Like, man. Wrestling crowds, the way they used to be. I'm just thinking about that match. If you want to go back, I know I've given many recommendations of the show, but here's another one. If you want to go back and watch that match, it's attack Flair, and when Flair asks Sting to be his partner, because Arn and Pillman keep beating him up every week on Nitro. This is like the early era of Nitro, and then it's just a big ruse, and they all kick Sting's ass. The crowd today would totally see through that, right? Like everybody would know what was coming. That freaking live crowd. I mean, even like for me when I was like, okay, this might happen. But like that live crowd was just disgusted when Ric Flair turned on Sting.
Mm-hmm. And same thing with Hogan's NWO moment. Like that people would have been talking on Twitter about that for weeks.
Do you suppose there was somebody in the crowd yelling, "Hey, that's Blade Runner Flash"?
Yes.
I feel there's got to be some territorial stables that we didn't.
Oh, we're definitely missing a bunch. That's why I said mine was post 1990, basically.
Yeah.
I had sorry. Go ahead.
No, I would say, but like the thing, like back to like the point about the Heenan family, it was generally like in that era, it would be like a manager with a group of folks rather than like a stable. I mean, like Mid-South had the Rat Pack.
Gary Hart, didn't he? J-Tex or something like that.
Well, that was in NWA. Like Gary Hart had his thing, and then like in World Class there was Devastation Incorporated too. Skandor Akbar's group, but I don't think those groups would make my top 10.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in this top 10, and then the group's kind of just missing out. So, guys, this has been a fun discussion.
I'm sure we've missed one. People are going to mock us on Twitter.com.
Aces and eights.
Yeah. At Top Rope Nation, send us your thoughts. Oh, I was going to read some of the listeners because I tweeted this out earlier. And
yeah, we need to do that. We need to give the listeners some.
Yeah, we got quite a few
Time.
responses. So let's see what some of them said. I said I'd read some of these on the air. So, let's see. A lot of people disagreeing with each other. Got some conversation going.
We should have probably mentioned the Wyatt family, by the way. That was one
I had them kind of in that just missing out too. Let's see. Mr. Furman Torres, he had the Horsemen at number 1. Also, he had Dangerous Alliance at number 2, DX. And then number 4, here's one we haven't talked about, the Main Event Mafia. Right? A little TNA.
Insert cricket noises there.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that one, but the other 3, all right. Let's see.
They're just below. They're below the LWO for me, baby.
At Sober Wrestling, NWO, Four Horsemen, Freebirds. The Shield, he said, yielded 3 top guys, including the face of the company, is WWE's last male home run act.
That's what I'm talking about. Near and dear to my heart, that guy.
Good take.
Ant Dale, 86, DX, Hart Foundation, NWO, Horseman Corporation, Nation, Heenan Family, Ministry, Freebirds, Evolution. What else? We've got... Headlock Talk, he said the Horsemen are probably number 1 in my book, NWO second, with the Shield a very close 3. Kyle, our guy out there in New Jersey, I believe, he's got the Horsemen, New Day, DX, NWO, and the Shield. Let's see, who else do we got here? Someone said that they'd rank the Shield below the Horsemen, Freebirds, NWO, and DX, pretty close to where we were at as well. So, yeah, and then we got a lot of people atting each other here about they thought they were wrong. This is why they disagree. And
love discussion.
Yeah. Derek Schropel being Mr. Sarcasm out there. The Natural Born Thrillers.
Derek, yeah, he DM'd me about the Natural Born Thrillers that long. By the way, I saw Derek was getting into it with one of the guys, our buddies from the Mat Men podcast about I'm glad you brought up Derek's name because I need to chime in on this. I hope Derek's listening. He was getting in with one of our buddies on the Mat Men podcast about the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. It was when the Honky Tonk Man got inducted, and their Twitter account put out, "Oh, the Honky Tonk Man, greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time," and they were kind of like putting him over, and Derek, said Chris Jericho was the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, and they were going back and forth. Both wrong. It's Randy Savage.
I think Randy Savage is better, also. Yes,
Randy, and by the way, Honky Tonk Man, though, not to pick sides between friends, but the Honky Tonk Man was better Intercontinental Champion than Chris Jericho.
Ooh, strong disagree.
None of if you want to talk about them as a wrestler, yes, obviously Jericho had the better career, but none of Jericho, it's just basically counting. His Intercontinental, it's okay, he won it a bunch of times, but none of his reigns mattered at all.
I would say the same about Honky Tonk's one reign.
He main evented houses. He drew big house. You put the Honky Tonk Man on top.
He never drew me to a house, Kyle. Never drew me to a house.
Well, I mean, that was before 1990.
That's true.
I mean, Honky, I mean, seriously, I mean, he did big business as the B show headliner in that era.
Yeah, I'd agree that Randy Savage kind of outranks most of them. Yeah.
Yeah, he puts the full package together.
Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm trying to scroll on my computer right now. The other thing I need to do for the listeners is been talking about leaving us a rating.
What you were doing.
Got to leave us a rating, guys, on iTunes. I was trying to pull it up on my phone and it doesn't show all our ratings. I guess we have too many at this point. We don't have that many, but too many to show them all on my computer. So I've had a few recent ratings I wanted to read off. So if you guys go to iTunes, you look up Top Rope Nation, give us a 5-star, leave us a review. And if it's good, we'll read it on the air. So we had Jamie recently. It's our most recent review. He said, "This podcast is my go-to podcast on the road to WrestleMania." How about that? We had Anthony back in February. He said, "Love wrestling. Then you have to listen to this podcast. Lots of interesting insight and opinions of mainstream wrestling and also outside of the mainstream, both old and new."
These are very smart people.
Yes. We've got Quintessential Babyface. That's the username. He said, "I am a new listener to the podcast, but it's quickly becoming one of my favorite podcasts. And I'm not just talking wrestling podcasts. I mean, podcasts in general. These guys know what they are talking about and do a great job of keeping their audience entertained. Thank you very much, Quintessential Babyface. We appreciate it. And let's see. Tony, as the description said, we get all three in this great wrestling podcast. What does the description say? Three guys talking wrestling, enjoying beers, and having some laughs or something like that. It says there are a ton of podcasts out there, but this one has to be in your rotation now. And let's see. The last one from February. These guys are hilarious and love the topic. Keep it going. Thank you very much. Good reviews. Love it. So leave us a rating. You like what we're doing. We love hearing from listeners. You can also email us, topropenation@gmail.com. But those ratings are key for us, get the word out about the show, keep it growing. It's been good ever since Podbean featured us last month as the podcast of the week. That bumped our numbers up. So we've had a lot of new listeners, new subscribers. Thanks for tuning in. Stay with us. We'll be putting out shows weekly, definitely in anticipation of WrestleMania here. We're always having some good shows. So, and if you like the historical shows too, hey, like what we did this week, you want to hear more of this, let us know. Tweet us. You like the show at Top Rope Nation. Do more of these nostalgia shows. Put some more content on Patreon. Subscribe. Let us know. We'll pump out more than one podcast a week if you guys join up on the Patreon page. Kyle?
I was going to go over NXT spoilers, but by the time everyone hears this, those will be available. So I guess it's not really it's not like we're doing this live on the radio. So I don't think that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be Johnny Gargano, Adam Cole main eventing TakeOver in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
One other thing I did want to bring up. Who do we think Kurt Angle's opponent's going to be at WrestleMania?
John Cena.
That's what I think too.
Agreed.
I think it
that
can
was
only
fun.
I think it can only be John Cena or Undertaker. And I'm starting to get the feeling this is going to be our first one without the dead man.
What about Finn Balor and the Undertaker?
It's going to be Finn and Lashley.
I'll tell you what, you guys would have freaking dig up Buddy Rogers and have him work Finn Balor. If you were at Jesus Christ, you and Finn Balor.
Greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time.
We'll never forget those 3 weeks. They were unbelievable.
There'll be more. There'll be plenty more where that came from.
You might win it back at Mania, yeah.
Guys, as always, pleasure talking with you two gentlemen. I always enjoy it every week.
Speaking of Bobby Lashley, you really just can't appreciate how big this guy is until you see him in person, like I did.
Oh, yeah, man. He is huge. Jacked to the gills. All right, guys. On that note, enjoy your weekend. We are, just over 3 weeks away now from WrestleMania, so it's coming soon.
Biggest thrill ride of the year.
So check us out. TopRopeNation.com, wherever podcasts are found. YouTube's one of the biggest areas we're trying to get growing. So if you haven't already subscribed, do it. It's free. YouTube.com/TopRopeNation. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate it very much. And of course, you're going to get extra content on YouTube. If you just listen to the podcast, that's great. But on YouTube, sometimes we throw in some extra things like the video Kyle was talking about earlier of the crazy fan at Fastlane. I'm going to throw that in the YouTube broadcast when I edit this tonight before I upload it.
Glad you brought that up because the chances of me remembering something from a half hour ago is very small.
I am expecting this video that Kyle probably filmed on his 10-year-old iPhone, so excuse the quality.
Let me tell you something. First of all right, I'm sorry.
Twitter page.
Techie, okay, for God's sake. But you're in luck because somebody else I was with was the one who did it. So
there we go. HD then.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got to say, Kyle, that video you sent me during Fastlane, it looked a little like maybe my cable reception back in the era of the Dangerous Alliance.
I don't know,
a little
man.
snowy.
I don't know what you're saying, man.
All right, everyone. Well, hit us up at Top Rope Nation on Twitter, topropenation@gmail.com. If you want to send a word to the show, leave us a rating. We'll read it on the show next week. And have a good weekend. Thanks for joining us. Take care.